2025 was the year the PlayStation 5 finally stopped feeling like a promise and started feeling like a platform that knew exactly what it wanted to be. For years, the PS5 existed in this strange in between space where the hardware was clearly powerful, but the software lineup didn't always justify that power. Cross generation releases, delayed projects, and uneven output made it hard to point to a defining identity. But in 2025, that changed. This was the year where PlayStation delivered experiences that felt confident, distinct, and in many cases unforgettable. These weren't just good games, they were games that show what the PS5 is capable of when developers fully commit to it. One of the clearest examples of that confidence was Rise of the Ronin. This was not a game trying to chase trends or copy what had already worked elsewhere. Instead, it leaned into player agency in a way that felt refreshingly old school while still being modern. The open world wasn't just there to be large, it was designed to react to player choices morally and politically in ways that actually changed how the story unfolded. Combat was deep and flexible without demanding perfection from the player, and the historical setting gave the game a grounded tone that made its moments of violence and drama feel earned rather than exaggerated. Rise of the Ronin wasn't flawless, but it was ambitious in the best way, and an ambition like that is what pushes a platform forward. Silent Hill 2's remake was another defining moment for PS5 in 2025, and not because it was flashy or loud. In fact, it succeeded by doing the opposite. This remake understood that Silent Hill 2 was never about spectacle. It was about discomfort, guilt, and psychological dread that lingered long after you put the controller down. The updated visuals didn't erase the game's identity, they enhanced it. Fog, lighting, sound design, and subtle environmental details worked together to create a constant sense of unease. This was horror that trusted the player to sit with uncomfortable emotions rather than distracting them with non-stop jump scares. In a year full of action-heavy releases, Silent Hill 2 stood out by being quiet, deliberate, and emotionally exhausting in the most effective way possible. Stellar Blade was one of the year's biggest surprises not because it looked good, that was obvious from the start, but because it played so well. At a time where many games try to juggle too many systems, Stellar Blade focused on tight combat, responsive controls, and a clear sense of momentum. Every encounter felt deliberate, every moment felt polished. It didn't waste the player's time with unnecessary complexity or bloated mechanics. Instead, it delivered a streamlined experience that rewarded skill and attention. The result was a game that people didn't just admire visually, but actually wanted to keep playing in 2025. That kind of focus was refreshing. Dragon's Dogma 2 finally arrived after years of anticipation, and it didn't compromise what made the original special. This was a game that refused to hold the player's hand, and that refusal was exactly why it worked. Combat was chaotic and unpredictable, exploration felt genuinely dangerous, and the pawn system evolved into something that felt more alive and reactive than ever before. The world didn't exist to make you feel powerful, it existed to challenge you, surprise you, and occasionally humble you. Dragon's Dogma 2 reminded players that difficulty doesn't have to be artificial to be meaningful. It can come from systems interacting naturally, from enemies behaving intelligently, and from a world that doesn't bend itself around the player's convenience. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was one of the most important PS5 games of the year, not just because of the legacy, but because of how confidently expanded upon it. This wasn't a simple retelling or a nostalgia driven remake. It was a reinterpretation that respected the original while also taking bold risks. The expanded environments made the world feel vast and alive. The combat system refined everything that worked in the previous entry, and the character moments were given room to breathe in ways that added emotional weight rather than padding. Rebirth felt like a game that understood its responsibility to longtime fans while still being accessible to newcomers, and that balance is incredibly difficult to achieve. In 2025, it set a high bar for what modern RPGs can be. Gran Turismo 7 deserves recognition not because it launched that year, but because 2025 was when it truly felt complete. Through updates, refinements, and continued support, it evolved into one of the most polished racing experiences on the PS5. The attention to detail, the handling, and the overall presentation made it clear that this was a game built by people who genuinely love car culture. It's a reminder that some games don't need to be brand new to be relevant. Sometimes longevity and care are what turn a good release into a great one. What made 2025 special for the PS5 wasn't just the individual titles, but the variety: horror, action, RPGs, racing, all represented by games that felt fully realized. This wasn't a year defined by one single blockbuster carrying the platform. It was a year defined by consistency, creativity, and confidence. The PS5 finally felt like it had its own identity rather than existing as an upgraded version of the previous generation. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. It really does help the channel grow, and I appreciate every single bit of support. Also, if you want to go a step further, check out my Patreon. Over there, the latest exclusive video takes a deep dive into 10 underrated classics you should replay, and it's available right now for supporters. Your support helps me keep making longer, more in-depth content like this. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and as always, game on.